Hello, trumpet players. Today we're going to talk about how to do long tones. We're going to talk today about three different styles of long tones, and in the process, I'm going to make available to you sheet music, a free PDF for the second style of long tone, and that's going to come from my daily routine book. And also, I'm going to send you a link down below that will take you to a 99-cent version of my newest long tones that I wrote for one of my new books. It's not out yet. It's going to be the Trumpet Chops Player book, and hopefully that'll be out in a few months. I keep saying that, and it keeps taking longer and longer. But anyway, so before we talk about those three different styles, I want to talk first about why we do long tones. Some say that they do long tones to improve their sound. And while I agree that it is an important part of improving your sound, yes, you want to do long tones because that helps you to improve your sound. The way some people talk about it, it's as if doing long tones will somehow magically change you to have now a better sound. And I don't believe it works like that. There are too many things that contribute to a good sound, and there are too many other things that will make you sound bad. So no, I do not believe that long tones are some sort of magical cure for a bad sound. But long tones are a very important part of the process of getting a better sound. I believe that the reason we should do long tones is because of the mechanics. How does the trumpet work? If you understand the way that the lips and the tongue and the air and all of this stuff coordinates differently from one note to the next, if you understand that, if you understand that for example, the lip tension for E in the middle of the staff, top of the staff, is going to be different from the octave below. Each note, even a half step difference, there's a subtle, very subtle difference from E flat to E natural. And the mechanics of how we produce those notes is slightly different. So the way we improve our sound on each of those notes is to spend time playing just that note so that our subconscious mind can remember where precisely is my tongue inside my mouth, where precisely is my jaw in relationship to my upper teeth, where precisely is the angle of my instrument. Now, I don't believe you need to know consciously all of that. No, I think it's actually detrimental to know all of that. But I do believe that our subconscious mind remembers all of that stuff for us. And we play, some people will call it playing by feel. And I agree with that. I believe in that. We do play by feel. But what we mean by feel is our subconscious mind remembers all those physical properties. So let's talk quickly, before we do these other individual long tones, let's talk quickly about how you should be doing them. First of all, one of the biggest mistakes people make when they do long tones is they make them too short. Uh, if you if you do this, that's not a long tone. That's a whole note. Whole notes are not long tones. We want a whole note with a fermata on it. Hold the note. Okay, long tones. The more time you spend on a single note, the more data your brain, your subconscious mind collects for that note. Okay? You see where we're going with this? All right, so second thing, Uh, we want to take a deep breath because we want to have, and we'll get more into that later, we want to have a variety of different fullnesses in our air capacity, in our lungs, as we're doing the long tone. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. Air delivery. I like to tell people that what your air is, that's what your music is. Okay? If your air is harsh, then your music is going to be harsh. If your air is jagged and unpredictable, then your music is going to be jagged and unpredictable. If your air is beautiful and smooth, then your music will be beautiful and smooth. All right? We want, when we're doing long tones, to have completely steady and smooth air from the beginning of the note to the end of the note. Completely steady. In other words, not changing. The airstream does not change during the note. Um, we also want to uh, create the best sound that we can possibly create during the entire process of playing the long tone. And part of what that is getting the instrument to resonate. And really, we want to. So when we're playing up in the pitch, you kind of push against the ceiling. And when you push against that ceiling, it holds the note into place. It's hard to explain it more, if you haven't done it yourself. It's hard to explain and hard to understand what I'm talking about. But there is a ceiling. We can bend down very easy, but bending up, you hit a ceiling. It's very difficult to bend up without popping into the next note. So where that ceiling is, it helps to hold the pitch in place. And so we talk about resonance, but that is a little bit sharp. You're playing just a tiny bit sharp to get that effect. Now, having said that, what we're striving for when we're playing the long tone is perfectly uniform, perfect uniformity throughout the study. So we don't want the tone to change. We don't want any jolts in the sound. We don't want any overtones to change. And I know that's sort of like saying the same thing with tone. So like if you're playing a long tone and go, if it's changing sound like that, we don't want that. We want it to stay the same. Now, the reason why it does that normally is because of body movement. Your tongue might be moving, your chest might be collapsing. There's always some sort of body movement. Sometimes people shrink when they play. Um, so yeah, we want complete uniformity from the beginning of the exercise to the end of the exercise. Also, what we don't want is vibrato. We don't want dynamics. We don't want musicality. We don't want expression. We don't want interpretation. Now, some people are proud of the fact that they play everything, even every exercise, as if it was a piece of music. I believe that if you're doing the 50% rule, and that's one of the things that I teach is the 50% rule, you're supposed to be spending at least 50% of your practice time practicing music. If you're doing that, then it's better for you if you treat the exercises very mechanically and do not put the music in there. Do not be expression. Do not use expression. Do not be expressive. That's what I was trying to say. Do not be expressive. Do not be musical. Okay. And the reason why we want that is being musical when you're doing the exercises can actually lead to being less musical on the music. And hear me out on this. If we can hold a completely steady airstream and be completely uniform throughout the whole study, If you have the skill for that, then you also have the skill now to do a phrase that is uniform but growing in intensity, and then uniform but diminishing after the climax. You cannot build that skill in an environment where it's going up and down, and so all that interpretation that you're putting into the long tones is ruining the effect for you. Your phrasing in your music will be enhanced by your ability to hold a steady tone. Okay, so I know that's a bit controversial for some of you. Okay, so now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's talk about the 3 styles of long tones. The first style is what we call a static long tone. And the static long tone is when you just hold one note. Okay, now all of these rules and instructions and all this stuff applies to these long tones the same way. Me personally, I don't like static long tones. We won't go into why right now, but I don't like static long tones. But a lot of people, you know what? It's funny. I don't like static long tones. I won't practice static long tones, but there are times when the static long tone is important and a good tool for a student. I know that sounds contradictory, but it's not. Different students have different needs. I know what kinds of benefits there are for a static long tone. Sometimes students need precisely that benefit. So that's when I will prescribe a static long tone for that student. But 99% of the time, no. But we're going to do it anyway now because I want you to see the 3 styles. So now the extreme. Not everybody that does static long tones does this, but this is one of the ways that people do this. The extreme way of doing static long tones is to keep playing even after you've run out of air. And we're going to talk about that after I do the long tone. Watch this. Big breath. Okay. Now I played a little louder than I normally would because I didn't want to waste your time. You play louder, the note's going to be shorter, okay? I could have played it much longer than that. But I wanted you to see what happens when you get to the end of the note. You keep pushing with your diaphragm just like you're still playing a note. Now this is very important. And we still get this on the third style of long tone. You'll see when we get to that we're still using this without having to actually go to that extreme. Okay, why are we going to take the breath, take the note all the way past beyond when after we've run out of the air? Why would we do that? Well, think about the different capacities. I mentioned this earlier. Think about the different lung fullnesses. You start off with a full breath, right? Now, holding a steady tone, just in terms of mechanics, is different at full than it is from half. And then the mechanics from half to empty is different once again. Okay? So how you deal with creating a steady tone when the position of the chest is changing, the position of the lungs is changing, so that the diaphragm is pulling further up into the chest cavity. And that means that the core muscles now are shrinking in farther and farther. You know what this is sort of like? I remember when I first started doing weights, and my brother was showing me how to do this. And when I first started, I'll go to the side like that. When I first started, I think I was doing something like this. And um, he said, no, don't do it like that. Why? Because if you do that, you're not getting, first of all, just in terms of strength, not talking about looks, but strength. What are you going to do with that? Right? So I'll tell you today, when I do my pull-ups, I do pull-ups now instead of weights. Right? When I do my pull-ups, I pull from extended and I come all the way. I'm not doing this kind of pull-up where you're only doing like 6 inches or something. I go all the way to the bottom, all the way up, all the way to the bottom, all the way up. And what does that do? You've got now strength that you can use at each one of these positions. I also go very slow. My pull-ups are sort of like long tones, right? It's the same philosophy. But can you see that when you're at this position, it's very different from when you're at this position. Okay? Those are the position that the muscles are in. It's different. So you need, if you're gonna be in this case, if you're gonna have a steady tone from the beginning of the note to the end of the note, when the rib cage is changing, where the muscles are, and what part of the muscle is flexing and which part of the muscle is not, that's all changing. So you take the long tone to the end of your breath for that reason. Now, I don't actually like that because I don't think it's good for you. I mean, going past your breath. Does that make sense? I think what I did just now, I think that's the first time I've done that in years. So I'm just demonstrating it here for you because it's related to the third style. So this first style that we just talked about is the static long tone. The next one we're going to talk about is the changing long tone. Sometimes we'll call this the non-static long tone. Okay, so something in the long tone exercise has to change. We're not just now going to play just one long note. Now the change could be a dynamic change, which I don't do that. It could be a tonguing change. So you might play the same note, but tongue it 2 or 3 times. But the one I prefer most is when you're slurring. So, and the exercise we're gonna do right now is from my daily routines book. Let me open up real quick. So we're actually gonna do 2 different exercises from this book. We're not gonna do the whole thing in the video, but you have access to this. This is a free PDF. Just click below to find it. I'm not sure where I'm going to post it, but I'll put it on either on Dropbox or on my website or something. So the first exercise descends, goes down to the lowest, to the F sharp. The second exercise ascends, starting from F sharp, going up to high C. Now what we want to do is all those same rules that we were doing before, right? Everything we talked about. Completely steady airstream. We want the pitch to be up in the pocket, pushing against the ceiling. And we want all the stuff we already talked about, okay? The difference now is that we're going to be slurring the notes. Now, when you slur, this is how I look at it. When you slur, push the air through the horn without playing a note, and move your first valve. You hear the valve going foot, right? There's like a a a a little hish sound every time you move the note. We want to blow through the note, through that note change with enough air support so that we can kind of hear that foot when we change the fingering. Okay? Now, Notice how slowly I played it. This is half notes mostly, with the exception being the last note. And then there's a caesura right there. Whenever you see a caesura in my book, it means take the horn off your lips. Okay, let's do the next one. You see that? I'm playing like a computer. My whole effort is in keeping that straight, steady tone. I'm not playing it musically. I'm not interpreting anything. I'm not doing anything musical whatsoever. No expression. It is completely mechanical. Okay? And the whole point is so that when I do play musically, I can create those smooth curves. You know what? Jagged lines lead to jagged curves. In other words, jagged air leads to jagged phrasing. Smooth lines lead towards smooth curves. So smooth air leads to smooth phrasing. So this steady, mechanical, robot-like way of doing the long tones is extremely important. And in fact, you know what, I'm going to go as far as to tell you all the exercises you do, whether it's long tones, lip slurs, pedal tones, they should all be done this way. You shouldn't be playing them as music. The only time you should do that is if you're extremely short on time and cannot ever, for some reason, play music stuff, which is, I think, you'd be better off finding pieces of music um, to replace your routine than you would to just do a routine. Anyway, let's not get into that. But yes, everything you do should be as mechanical and straight as that. Okay. Now let's hop to the second exercise. So what we did is just now is exercise number 19. Now we're going to do exercise number 20. And this is the diminished arpeggio resolving to a major arpeggio. We're going to start on the one that goes to F sharp. All right, you see that? Trying to maintain perfect uniformity throughout the whole thing. Exact same uh, air delivery. Now let's do the last one in this exercise. I mean, the last long tone in this exercise. A little shaky there at the end, and that's precisely what we're talking about, aren't we? So I already finished my routine today, and I'm a bit tired, and that's why it sounds like that. Anyway, but I'm not apologizing. I don't apologize for exercises. Now, so that's the second style of long tone, and I obviously it's from my book. I did that style of long tone for many, many years. Okay, originally I got it from other books, But when I wrote my own book, I needed my own exercises. And what you just saw there, what you heard there, is the result of me trying to take the same concept and apply it to my own exercises. Okay. Now this third category is my category. In about 10 years ago, in the process of trying to find long tones that work better for my students, and what I mean by that is students that didn't have 2 hours to practice a day, okay? In an effort to find exercises that made more sense for people who didn't have a lot of time to practice, I came up with this new style of exercise. But then when I went to the new books, so that was for the Chops Express book. Now for the new series of books that's coming out, I kept that concept. It's sort of a expansion, but since we're not, you know what some people call it is spider long tones, where you're going this, a little bit higher, a little bit lower, a little bit higher, a little bit lower, a little bit higher, a little bit lower. That's what we're doing, but instead of just playing just the notes, I came up with a new style of long tone that you actually play scales to get to the highest note and then scales to get to the lowest note. And remember we were talking about going to the end of our airstream? Because these scales are in here and we're trying to do several long tones in one breath, you're actually getting the same benefits without actually having to go beyond empty, okay? So let me show you this. Now, like I told you, this has not been published yet. So uh, this is where I put my new routines. These are unpublished. In fact, the PDF that you're going to get hasn't even been started yet. But let's take a look at this. Now, the very first exercise, long tone number 1, has a very narrow range. Now we're applying all the same rules that we applied before. Now what's going to change now is we've added a lip bend at the beginning, and the lip bend is very important in my opinion, for your long tones, because remember we're trying to get up into the ceiling. We're going to push up against the pitch. Well, you don't want to be sharp. We want to be as resonant as we can. Resonant means you're in the middle of the pitch, right? So the best way to get there is bring it down and then let it float back up itself. That's where you find that ceiling. So we're putting the lip bend in here to help you find that ceiling, okay? But notice the first exercise is actually very easy. It's based off of the Chickwitz exercise, by the way. All right, so that's the first one in this series. Now, notice that I didn't breathe. When we get to long tone number 7, you're supposed to breathe after the lip bend. So I'm going to do number 7 now. You see, with that, I'm getting very close to the end of my airstream. So I am working that. You remember earlier we were talking about the different, not capacities, what is it? Different fullness of the lungs. So I am getting very close to that point. When I hold that last note, I'm getting very close to the point of running out of air. And we want that. We want that from every long tone. All right, so now we're going to go to the last of the long tones. That's the last long tone number 12. The last one in this book. This is the book. I'm going to remind you, this is the Trumpet Chops Player book. Now, the Trumpet Chops Player book is supposed to cut off at G above the staff. That's why we hadn't gone up to high C or anything like that. This book is specifically for routines that want to stop at the top of the staff. It's great for high school students that are just now starting to work on their chops. And it's also great for students who have the higher range, but so if you're not familiar with my system, I like to teach that we take different days of different difficulty, right? So there's a medium day, a difficult day, and an easy day. So for example, this that we just did today is my easy day. I'm recording this video on Wednesday. Wednesday is the first easy day for me of the week. So, and that's why I chose this one, because it's the one I did today. So this is actually my second time doing these exercises today. But yes, this is supposed to be only up to G. I have another book that has them going up to high C. That's the Trumpet Chops Pro book. And it is a series, so more books will be coming out for different levels of player. All right. So that's what we have for you. If you have any questions about how to do long tones that somehow maybe I'm left out of this, I think I'm pretty thorough in covering all the bases here, but if you have other questions that I didn't answer, please feel free to ask below. If you want more content like this, I ask you to please click subscribe. There are going to be other exercise type videos coming out. I have plans on doing a lip slur video. I have plans on doing a mouthpiece buzz video, stuff like that. So if you want to be notified when those things come out, subscribe and click on the bell. There's a bell icon that you can click on. Other than that, thank you very much. God bless you, and we will see you on the next video. Thank you.